Okay, thank you very much, Katie and Jenny. I don't think I'd started the webinar properly. Hopefully everyone can hear me now. If you could confirm that, I would much appreciate it. I don't think I'd started properly. Thank you, Jenny. Sorry about that. Sorry to keep everyone waiting. If you were waiting on that. Um, okay, yeah, I'm seeing some confirmation. Thanks, everyone. Sorry about that. Yeah, okay, I'll start again. I was just talking about myself for 10 minutes. Um, okay. Um, Basically, all I'm going to do is run through all the main features of Predictable, um, explain how everything works, explain everything that's available, all the settings you can change and stuff like that. If at any point there are questions, such as telling me that I'm being silly and not starting the webinar, then please do pop them in that questions box. There's also a chat room where you can drop a message as well. So at any point, do feel free. If I go over something too fast, or you'd like me to go over it again, or I didn't explain something well, please just let me know. But yeah, I'll go through everything and make sure everyone's familiar with the stuff that's available. Starting off with the very beginning, making an account. So when you first download Predictable, this will be the screen that you see. You'll have to log in, or if you don't already have an account, which you won't if it's your first time, you'll have to create an account. So you want to tap that Create Account button and then fill in your details. As you might expect, you've got to fill in your name, email, and then just confirm a password. The two settings at the bottom. So firstly, there's therapist or user. That's not one to worry about really. It doesn't change how the app works or anything. It just gets stored as a value in our database. There's no need to change it if you're not worried about it. The important one though is an online or offline account. By default, you want to be using an online account really. That's the one most people use. What that means is that any settings you change, any personalizations, any phrases you create, they all get backed up to the cloud. And that's beneficial, A, because they're safe online, and B, if you were to log in on a different device, if you got another iPad or a phone, then everything would stay synced up. All your phrases on one device would be synced up to the other, and vice versa. Conversely, an offline account, none of that happens. So if you make an offline account and you make some phrases, change some settings, and then you were to log out of that account, all of those personalizations would be lost. So if you have used Predictable for a while, you may remember that we used to have a guest mode where no credentials were required at all to use Predictable. You could just tap guest mode and get going. We have since removed that in favor of this system. But the best comparison is the offline account is sort of just like guest mode with credentials now. So again, logging out will just wipe all of that personalization you made. But yeah, once you've filled in your details, you want to press create account down there. And then you'll get an email to that email address just asking you to verify your email address. Click on the link in that email and you'll be good to go. Then you just have to log in. I'll log in using my account. And my account is pretty much fresh. As I was talking to myself for 10 minutes, I changed a couple of things. But this is pretty much how it's going to look when a user makes an account for the first time. It's going to look like this, minus the hello there message. So this is the main screen that you'll see when you first make an account and start using Predictable. This is the main screen that most people are going to interact with. Also, forgive me, I'm just getting over a cold, so my voice may give out. We'll see. But yeah, so just top to bottom, I'll explain everything that's on the screen and how you can change it, because there is quite a lot as well that you can customize and tweak to fit your needs. So just along the top, we've got two sort of quick access strips. The orange one is history. So whenever you say something using Predictable, it gets saved into your Predictable history so that you can easily repeat yourself. And that's stored up there. You can swipe along to navigate or use those arrow buttons so you don't have to swipe. Very similarly, the yellow one is for the favorites category of phrases. And I'll show you exactly where phrases are stored and how to manage them all. But there is a category called favorites, and this yellow bar is just a quick way to access them, assuming that those are the words and phrases you're saying the most often. The big white space below that is what we call the message window, and that is where your messages get typed out. So you can see I've got a flashing blue cursor in there. If I start typing my message, you can see it appears in that window. To the right of the message window, we've got some feature keys, we call them. Here, there's 5 feature keys. The big one is the speaker button, and as you might expect, that speaks out your message. I have no idea if you're able to hear Predictable over a GoToWebinar, but It's playing hello down my ears. I don't know about yours. But that is the speak button. It will speak whatever's in the message window there. Below that, the sort of upwards facing arrow is the share button. And that basically just lets you share your message the normal iOS way of sharing things. So it could be to an email, a messaging service, notes, things like that. And if you're on an Android device rather than an iPad, it would just be the normal way of sharing things on an Android instead. The gear wheel to the right of that is, of course, the settings, which we'll do a big old deep dive into later, and we can run through what all the settings do and what there is available. Then you've got two different delete buttons. So if I type a big, long nonsense message, the single delete button, so the rubbish bin, the single rubbish bin, deletes one word at a time. The double rubbish bin then, of course, deletes everything at once. And you can see once you do that, it turns into an undo button. Just in case that was a mistake and you lost your message, you can just quickly undo that. And then, of course, below all that, you've got the keyboard itself, where I was typing my message. This is the predictable keyboard rather than the iOS one. You can see that the blue bar along the top is predictions. So what's special about those is they do learn the more you use the app. So the more you type, the more you use predictable, the predictions will get better over time. In the bottom right, there are some more feature keys. So these blue buttons in the bottom right. Firstly, there's this face, and that takes you to the emojis. And obviously, if you want to use emojis just in your text, like a lot of people do, that's how you do it. But what's special about these ones is that they also have sounds attached to them. Now, again, not sure if you'll be able to hear it, but the laughing emoji, for example, has a laughing sound attached to it, and the rest have various sounds as well, such as clearing your throat. I've just had a question that says, how do we enlarge the keyboard screen? So the keyboard is pretty much a set size. There are some things you can do, but there's a section of the settings called theme and appearance, where you can change a lot of font sizes, get rid of buttons, add buttons. So hopefully I can answer your question when we get to that part. Also, someone just let me know that you can't hear predictable. That's fine, it's not necessary. All you're missing out on is text-to-speech, voices, and emoji sounds, but it's not really necessary to hear. Thanks for letting me know. So yeah, that's the emoji button. To the right of that, this icon that looks like a phone buzzing is called the floor hold button. Floor hold is a feature that reads out a sentence such as, please bear with me while I'm typing my message, or, I'm typing, please hang on, something like that. And you can customize those phrases too, but that's just, to let people know that you are typing and it could take a bit of time. To the right of that, you've got another speaker button, the same as the one above. It just reads out what's in your message window currently. There's no real difference. It's just that it's quicker, closer to the keyboard. So if your hands are down there already, it's easier to hit that button than the one all the way in the top right. The very last feature key in the bottom right, those three horizontal lines, take you to the phrase bank. So phrase bank is phrases are what I was mentioning before. So the history up here, those are phrases, and the favorites up here, those are also phrases, each in categories called history and favorites respectively. And this phrase bank is where they're all stored. So if I tap that, you can see my keyboard has been replaced by the phrase bank. So along the top, I've got, excuse me, along the top, I've got all my categories. As you can see there, there's the favorites one. But there's many pre-built categories such as chat, questions. Universal core contains a lot of useful core vocabulary. And then if I go all the way to the end, there's also that history category there. So you can see it's got those exact same phrases inside. Again, you're just swiping to navigate along those categories, and there's also those navigation buttons, so you don't have to swipe. And the same, you can swipe up and down within the category and use those buttons as well. And again, like with the history, you can see that this is the exact same as the favorites in the top right. I've got yes and yes. And then, of course, you're just tapping on a phrase to have it be spoken aloud. And you can see it's gone into my history there because it got spoken. I also just had a question, is the central section able to be enlarged? So assuming that's the message window here, this white space where you're typing your message. Again, there are some layout tweaks in the theme and appearance settings, which I'll run through in a bit. where you can change what buttons are available. For example, you could hide the history and favorites up there if you want to get rid of them to give the message window more space. So yeah, there are some ways you can do that. There's a bunch of ways, you can hide clutter or remove buttons that aren't useful, but all of that can happen in the oh, sorry, no, that was wrong of me. The strip with the categories in, can that be enlarged? No, there's actually no setting to enlarge that. You can enlarge the font or remove the icons if that's useful, but no way to actually make that taller. But yeah, so that's how the phrase bank works. Like at a glance, you tap on your category, tap on the phrase you want to speak, and then that's it. Of course, this is just the pre-built phrase bank. You're probably going to want to customize it and add your own phrases. And the way you do that is with this edit button on the right, so the pen with the lines. So if I go into my favorites category and press that edit button, we're now in edit mode. So you can see that I've got two new buttons, add category and add phrase, just at the start of the categories and the phrases respectively. As you might expect, I can press on those to add a new one of them. So if I add a new phrase in my favorites called "My name is Brad," on the screen, there's a bunch of things to fill in. So firstly, there's spoken phrase. I've typed in "My name is Brad." That means the thing that actually gets spoken by the text-to-speech voice will be "My name is Brad." The display phrase box just means how it is displayed in the phrase bank, if that makes sense. So if I just put my name in here rather than the more verbose "My name is Brad," then in the phrase bank it will be displayed as my name, but what actually gets read out will be "My name is Brad." Then you can just choose what category it wants to go into. In this case, I do want it in my favorites, so I'm going to leave that. And then you can add some extras to your phrase. Firstly, you can add sounds. So these are all the sounds that I was talking about before with the emojis, the coughing and throat clearing and stuff like this. You can also record your own sounds to add to them. So I'll show you how to do that now too. You just press new recording, press that microphone button, allow microphone access if it's the first time. Hello, my name is Brad. Then you press that stop button. Excuse me. You can press play there to just make sure the recording went through okay. I promise it did. Name your recording. So I'm again just going to call it my name. Press the tick in the top right to save. And now that recording that I just made of me speaking is attached to that phrase. So rather than the text to speech reading out the phrase, it will be that recording that gets played instead. You can also add an icon to it. So there's a bunch of icons which are just taking the time to load that are already available in the app. So all of these ones, you can search for them too, things like wave. But yeah. You can also add your own icons, either by the gallery or the camera. So you can take your own pictures to add, or if you've got photos on your device, you can just access your gallery to look at them instead and attach that to the phrase. Someone asks, should you use a headset to record the phrases? And that, I suppose, depends on the device that you're using. So for example, right here, I've got an iPad Pro, which has a fairly decent microphone on it. So that would be probably acceptable for me. Obviously, it could depend on personal preference as well. It would be better, I suppose, if you do have access to a headset. You're going to get a better quality recording. So it might just be nicer to use when you're recording your phrases. But it's not necessary. Again, just depends on what sort of quality you need out of your recordings. But yeah, you can add an icon, which I didn't actually do. I'll just choose a random one. And finally, you can add multimedia. Now, I'm not sure many people use this feature, but it is kind of fun. What you can do is you can attach a web address or a YouTube video to your phrase. So I'll choose a YouTube video, and the one I always go for is hello, because you search for hello on YouTube and you get the Adele song. And I'll save that with the tick in the top right. Now, what that's going to do is, once it reads out my phrase, it will then open YouTube and play the Adele song. And you might, again, not sure how many people use it, but you might find it useful if, it's like something like this is my favorite song, or this is what we did at the weekend, or this is my favorite place, things like this that you want to share a video easily. So I've pressed tick to save. Now I've exited edit mode, and you can see that my new phrase, my name with the weird clock symbol, is there. It's also appeared in the top right in my favorite strip up there. If I tap on it, my recording is played, and then it will open YouTube. I don't know why the Adele link's unavailable, but it would open that YouTube video, whatever you chose. Just heading back into edit mode. So adding a new category is very much the same, just a little bit simpler. All you have to do is name the category, like sports perhaps. I'll search for a football icon. Oh, it doesn't seem like the football icon. I should have known that. But yeah, just choose an icon for that category. They look sporty. And then press the tick to save, and now I've got my sports category. Right now it's empty, so I could again go into edit mode, add my new phrase to that, but I won't drag you through that journey again. But that is how you want to build up your phrase bank. So you want to add any new categories you want. You can also add to existing ones and then add your phrases. As well as adding new ones, it is of course possible to edit existing ones. So again, this my name category, if I decide I'm not happy with that icon, again, I press this edit button. I then tap on the phrase that I want to edit. And again, the screen is the exact same. I've got all the information, but of course, it's all already there because we made this phrase already. But if I just want to change the icon to, to a hand for like hello or something, and there we are. The phrase has been edited just with that new icon. Just heading back into edit mode because it's quite important. There's a couple more things you can do. Firstly, there's this delete button. So now it's in sort of delete mode. You can see there's rubbish bins and everything. What you can do is just tap on everything you want to delete. So if I decide I hate these phrases, I don't want them anymore, just tap on them all. You can see they all turn red to be marked for deletion. And when I'm happy with what I want to delete, the same applies for categories, by the way, I just press tick, confirm that I do want to delete them, and now they're all gone. So you can see those phrases disappeared, those categories disappeared. Just below that delete button, there's the reorder button, which works in pretty much the same way. Oops. So when you tap on this reorder button, you can then see the order in which everything's appearing. So you can see my name is first and then followed by yes, etc. In this mode, you can just tap on things in the order that you'd prefer them to appear. So say rather than my name first, I would prefer help because I want that to be quick and accessible. So I tap that, you can see it's become number 1. I could maybe do please second if I wanted. Press that tick to confirm. Then you see help has become the first phrase, and right now we're in the favorites category. So help is my first favorite phrase. And you can see that got reflected in the top right too. So now help is first and foremost. The only other things in the phrase bank, so that was all of edit mode. Someone just asked about reorder, so I'm going to go over that again. It's not super clear. So firstly, you want to go into your category that you want. In this case, I'll do favorites. Press edit mode, so that pen with the lines to go into edit mode. And then reorder is this button in the bottom right. It sort of just looks like boxes switching around. So you tap that, and now you're in reorder mode. And then you know that because everything has got its number on its order. So you can see help is my first phrase, please is my second, etc. And then all you need to do to reorder is tap on them sequentially in the order you prefer them to appear. So for example, if I want thank you to appear first, I tap on that one first. You can see it changes to number 1. And then if I want please to be second, we're being very polite today. And you tap on that, you can see that please has become number 2. My name, if I want that to be third, tap on that third, etc., etc. As soon as you're done, you press tick, and you can see thank you is first, then please, then my name, just like we pressed the same order. And again, it's reflected in the top right up there. The only other part of the phrase bank, so that was all of editing, how to manage it, how to delete things, add things, edit things, things like this. There's also the grid view, which is this button that looks like a table. All this is a full screen version of your phrase bank. So if you know, you're not using the keyboard to talk that often, you're more relying on your phrases, you might prefer this sort of view. There's just much more screen space dedicated to your phrases. It's the same implementation. You've got your categories along the top and your phrases below that you can swipe along or up and down. And then again, tapping on a phrase speaks it. And again, you've just got a delete button up there as well to just clear that. It's just a much simpler layout based around the phrase bank rather than typing and all those feature keys and stuff. And then to go back, you just press that big back button in the bottom right. when you're in the phrase bank, to get back to the keyboard, you just press that keyboard button just there below the grid view button. And that, I think, is everything that's on the main screen. So that is all the basic features. If you were to make a new account, that's everything that would be available. Like I said, there's a lot to customize and change, so I'll go through that now. But just before I do, I was wondering if anyone had any questions about any of those features or anything they'd like to know about this main screen, because it is where most users are going to be spending most of their time. Not seen any. We can always come back, but in that case, I will start dipping into the settings. So again, settings is via this gear wheel on the right here. Down the left, you can see all your different sections of the settings, starting with account. And then on the right are the settings in that section itself. Starting with the account section, there's not much here. It's quite administrative. Firstly, you've just got a couple of settings to reset the settings to default and restore the phrase bank to default. Both of these actions are password protected, so you can't do them by accident. It's you have to try. So if I pop in my password here on reset phrase bank to default, you'll see that if I now go back, my history up there has been reset. All my phrases that I made have gone. It's all been reset to the default as if we first made the account. And the exact same for the settings, it's password protected. Someone asks, can you modernize an existing banked voice? I'm not sure about that. So we don't provide a voice banking service ourselves. The next section, the speech settings, I'll talk about voice banking. I know that there are some services that allow you to repair a voice, but I'm not sure about modernizing an existing one. But yeah, I'll visit that when I talk about the voice banking in the next section, but I'm not sure about that one, sorry. Just below those reset buttons, you've just got some stats that tell you how many times you've spoken, how many categories and phrases you have, etc. There's a forgotten password button so that you can quickly reset your password, logout button, which logs you out, and finally a delete account button. Again, password protected, so you can't do that by accident. So that's all the account settings, again, just for managing your account, really, quite administrative. The next section is quite an important one, of course, speech settings. So there's 3 voice engines available. Device voices, in this case, because I'm on an iPad, those will be the iOS voices, and that is what most people use, I think. And below that, you've also got Acapella and Model Talker, and both of these are voice banking services. So in case you're not familiar with voice banking, how that works is they're an external service. We just sort of integrate them. So they're an external company called Acapella and Model Talker. You would go to them, they have you record a bunch of phrases, and then they create a synthetic version of your voice. And then you can use that voice in Predictable the same as you would any other text-to-speech voice. I'll talk about how that works when we get there, but just to finish off device voices, you just tap on that, and here you can see all the accents that are available. If I press all accents, you can see there's many more. Tapping on an accent just shows you what voices are available in that accent. There's both male and female ones available. One thing to note about device voices, and not many people are aware, is that you can download more voices from the settings. So for example, some voices maybe don't pronounce things quite right or are a bit low quality. I'll just show you how to do that really quick because I'm not sure many people are aware. So it's from the iPad settings themselves. So you want to go into the iPad settings and then accessibility, voiceover, speech, voice, and here you can see a list of voices. So for example, here's a bunch of US voices that aren't yet downloaded onto the iPad. So if I go on Alex, for example, it starts downloading. So you can see there's a bunch of different ones available. What's good though is that if I scroll up to English, because I know there's some enhanced English ones, Oliver, for example, you can see that there's the normal Oliver voice, and there's also Oliver Enhanced. And again, this is just a sort of improved quality voice provided by Apple. So pronunciation's better, it sounds a bit more natural. And again, for some reason, they're not downloaded to the iPad by default. So yeah, you can go into there, into these iPad settings, download that voice, and when you go back to predictable, it will be listed in this list. So you can see if you're in British, I've got those 2 enhanced voices there. So that might be worth looking into if you find someone's not super pleased with their voice. So yeah, those are the device voices. Next, you've got Acapella and Model Talker. So like I said, you go away, you bank your voice with Acapella or Model Talker. Excuse me. You'll record a bunch of phrases. They'll create that synthetic voice, give you an account. And then what you can do is come into Predictable, go into this Acapella section, and then just log in with your username and password and then hit download, and your voice will get downloaded. It's really simple. These pre-downloaded voices here are just some example voices to show you how Acapella voices sound. So for example, Rob and Rebecca are Therapy Box employees. So Model Talker is the exact same. You've got some pre-downloaded ones, in this case not Therapy Box employees, I'm not sure who they are, but again, you would just pop in your Model Talker username and password and then hit download, and then your voice can be used as a text-to-speech voice in Predictable. Someone was, again, you're asking about modernizing the voice, and you said you used Model Talker. I'm not sure. I've not heard of Model Talker doing anything like that. I would recommend emailing them to see if it's possible. I know that they can regenerate voices. I don't know if that would help. I'm not sure if voices can be modernized. I'm not sure about the tech behind that either, but I would recommend getting in touch with Model Talker to see if that's something that they can provide. Or looking around to see if there's other ways to do it as well. Like I said, voice banking is not a service provided by us at Therapy Box. We just integrate their services so that you can download your voice in Predictable. So below the voice engines, the rest of these settings are just about tweaking the speech and how it works. So firstly, you've got speaking rate and speaking pitch, which, as they say on the tin, you can just modify how fast or slow the voice should be, as well as how high or low. Again, this is just down to preference, really. One other useful potentially thing is that if you bump up the pitch, it can start to sound a bit childlike. So if you've got, unfortunately, no Apple Child's voices available for text-to-speech. So if you have a child user, then they might prefer a higher pitch voice. Below that, you've got this section called Speak Button Behavior. So there's technically 3 different speak buttons within Predictable. So if I just head back to the main screen a moment, there's this one up here in the top right. That's what we call the main speak button. This blue one in the bottom right, which is the keyboard speak button. And then what you can do is set up the message window. So this big white space, you can set that up as a speak button as well, just so that it's a really big target. So if I head back into the settings, this speak button behavior, you see you've got 3 different sections referring to those 3 different buttons, because what you can do is tweak how those buttons behave individually. So if I start with main speak button, first thing you can do is change between show and speak. So I set it to show. Excuse me. You can see that rather than a speaker up there, we've got the sort of upside down label thing. That's because you can use that button to, oops, sorry, I'm having an issue with the app. You can use that button to show your message. So you can press that button, the whole screen becomes this sort of sign, and then you can flip the iPad and show the message to someone. There could be in a loud environment, or somewhere where speaking is not possible or appropriate. So yeah, you can set up one of your speak buttons to be show if you wanted. I'm going to put that back to speak, because what you can also do is just change exactly what should be spoken in the message window. So by default, it's always speak all, so that everything in that white space will get spoken when you press the button. However, you can have it as speak before or after cursor, so that you can tap in the message window and you'll get that flashing blue cursor and have what's before or after spoken instead. Speak last sentence, so that'll just speak the most recent sentence in the message window. Speak unspoken is quite useful. So if you were to type out a message, speak, and then add more to the message, you could just press that speak button again, and it will just read out everything that's not already been spoken. So you don't have to, clear your message window and things like that. Speak current sentence just plays the one that the cursor is currently in. Finally, you've got speak interruption, stop or pause. It's paused by default. So if I just write a really long sentence and press the speak button, you can see it changes to a pause button. So then I can pause and play that speech as I want. If I change that to stop, then you can see if I press speak again, it's stop instead, and that just completely cancels the speech, so you can start again. So yeah, the settings are the same for the main speak button, keyboard speak button, and message window, so you can make them all individual and behave a bit differently if you wanted. The only slightly unique one is message window, so firstly you have to turn it on. So once I've turned that on, that main white box is now a big button where it doesn't change visually, but when I tap on there, you'll have to believe me. I mean, you can see the button changes, but it does speak. So tapping that now speaks as well. Again, there's some things you can change, whether it's show or speak, what should get spoken. Excuse me. The only thing to note here is that when you have this turned on, you won't be able to access the cursor. So, if I turn it off, and just sort of tap in that message window, you can see that cursor appears and I can move around where that cursor is. If that whole space is a button, you won't be able to do that. That also means you won't be able to do things like, selecting, cutting, copying, and pasting. So that's just worth bearing in mind. There's a trade-off there. The last few settings are just a few ways to change, again, just how speak behavior works really. Firstly, there's clear after speak. So if I go back, speak, I should have chosen a shorter sentence. But when it's done, it clears. So just saving you that extra tap of tapping delete all. Speak after space and speak after sentence are both similar. So speak after space will speak a word every time you press the space bar. So again, just letting you have a more sort of flowing conversation. Speak after sentence is the same thing, but instead after a sentence. So you can just speak a sentence at a time. Both of these not requiring you to press the speak button. Highlight as you speak looks like this. Again, if I just type some rubbish, each word gets highlighted as you speak it. Again, useful in case a user is hard of hearing, or also if you're using Predictable to speak over a call, you can see exactly what your call partner, for want of a better term, is hearing. The other few settings are send phrases to message window. So again, when you're tapping on a phrase, you can see I tapped on no and it appeared in the message window. You can turn that off if you just want the phrase to get spoken when you tap it, but not go to the message window. You just want to be able to tap on all your phrases and speak them. Again, speak phrases on tap. Obviously, you need one of these on. It either has to go to the message window, get spoken, or both. So you can just choose that here. Speak category on tap you can turn on as well if you want. That just means whenever you tap on a category, it will speak what that category is. The very last part is custom pronunciation and abbreviation. So what you can do is set up your own custom pronunciations. So for example, if there's non-English words or words that your synthetic voice isn't quite pronouncing correctly, things like this, you can add your own pronunciation. You can see there's a few here already. But the example I always use is cough. So if say the voice wasn't pronouncing cough correctly, it was saying co or something weird like that, you type in the word that's not being pronounced correctly, exactly how you'd write it, and then type in the pronunciation. So in this case, you would type C-O-F-F because that's the roughly phonetic way to write cough. You can just play sound to make sure that that is the sound you want. Excuse me. Oh, ironic. Didn't do that on purpose. And then save that. And then every time you type cough, it will say it properly. Not that I expect cough to be a problem word. It's just an easy example. Abbreviations is really, really similar. You can just type in some abbreviations that you want to use. So for example, here we've got SYL. You can just type SYL and the voice will say see you later rather than SIL or SYL. So yeah, exactly how you'd expect really. If you do want to edit or delete any of them, you just tap on it. Then you've got the edit button in the top right, as well as the delete button, like that. The next section is another important one, accessibility. So there are 5 main access methods within Predictable. Direct touch, screen tap, screen access, head tracking, and scan and track. Direct touch is what I'm using right now, so using my finger to tap and drag on the screen. There are some ways you can customize that though. So firstly, there's time delay, which means that you've got to hold down a button for a certain amount of time for that press to go through, and you can customize that duration too. You can see here by default it's 2 seconds. I'll pop it down to 1 just so I can show you how it works. If I go back to the main screen and I want to press problem on my prediction bar, I want to press the word problem. If I just tap that once, nothing happens. What I have to do is hold it down for that second, and you see you get that timer on screen. That timer turns green when I can let go, and as soon as I let go, that's when the press goes through. So again, it's just guarding against accidental presses. I'll turn that off for now. But there's also force delay, which is pretty much the same thing. Again, it's very similar. You can customize the duration, but now instead, rather than holding down, as soon as I tap, I get this timer, and I can't press anything else until that time is complete. So I don't have to hold down, just one tap. But again, it's guarding against those accidental presses where you might accidentally press more than one button at once or an extra one. I will also turn that off. The next access method is screen tap, and this is a scanning method. So in case you're not familiar with how scanning works, it looks like this. Each segment of the screen gets highlighted sequentially. So you can see I've got the top half and then the prediction bar and then the bottom half being highlighted. How screen tap works is that when the thing I want is highlighted, say if I want the keyboard, I tap anywhere on the screen, and then we go into that section and start scanning through that section. So if I want the letter A, I've chose a bad example here. I would just wait for it to go around to A, tap, 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 and I get my letter A. So the key concept here is there's progression and selection. So progression is happening automatically here. Every couple of seconds we're progressing to the next part of the screen. Selection is happening whenever I tap on the screen. You may have also noticed that this yellow cross button has appeared. That's just what we call the quick exit button, so I can quickly stop scanning. The whole screen has gone yellow right now because it scanned through everything 3 times and then stopped. So if I just head back into the settings and then screen tap, you can see I've got scanning rate 2 seconds. So that means every 2 seconds it will progress. And the scanning cycle was 3, so it goes through 3 times before just stopping and asking you if you actually want to continue. So that's how scanning works. Switch access is another scanning method, but this time for someone using an external switch. I think I might have an example around here somewhere. Yep, I've got a little switch box here. I don't know how big my camera is for you guys, but that's what it looks like. What you can do is connect an external switch. So that could be a little box like this with a bunch of buttons on it. It could be one of those big push buttons. So in this case, it's again the same. We're scanning through the app, but our selection method, rather than tapping on the screen, will be pressing a button on our switch. The only other point there is that you can also use a external keyboard, so a Bluetooth keyboard or plug one in. You can use that as a switch as well, which you might be more likely to have than a switch. As for the settings that you can change, the first one is manual versus automatic. Automatic means automatic scanning. So like with screen tap, it's automatically scanning through every 2 seconds to the next part. Manual is specifically for when your switch has more than 2 inputs, or 2 or more inputs, sorry. So in this case, for example, I've got many buttons on the switch. I've got 6, I think. So I might want to use manual. How that works is I can adjust the buttons here. Some of those buttons will be to progress and some will be to select. So you can see now, if I go back to the main screen, it's not automatically scanning at all. It's just waiting for me to press a button on my switch. And then another button will be to select. So that's switch access. Again, you can just customize that scanning rate and the scanning cycle, and again, just changing what buttons do what. If you scroll down on this list, you can see there are some keyboard keys there, for example, space and enter, which would be the most likely buttons you'd want to use on a keyboard. The next access method is head tracking. Now, this is only available on, firstly, iOS, and then also only available on devices that have a true depth camera. So that's iPad Pros, iPhone X's, and possibly XRs. I can't remember the models off the top of my head, but it's any model of iOS device with a true depth camera, and that's the ones used for Face ID recognition. So I pop head tracking on. I'll show you how it works. Let's allow access to the camera. I won't do any calibration yet because it mostly just works straight away. You can see this yellow cursor has appeared, and that's pretty much where my nose is pointing at the screen. So I'm moving my head to control where that cursor is. To select something, I just aim at it and dwell on it or hover over it like this. And it gets selected. Now, as you might have noticed, that was quite a long duration that I had to hold down my head in the same position. So there's a bunch of settings you can tweak. Firstly, you might want to adjust head sensitivity and head position. Sensitivity just means how much of an exaggerated head movement is required to move that cursor around. 1 is the lowest, so I'd have to move my head quite a lot to move that cursor around. Conversely, 10 would only require very slight movements. Head position, you probably will want to do the step just to calibrate it properly. All you need to do is pop the iPad in the location that it's going to be when you're head tracking, press adjust, get to see yourself, hello, and then press OK. And then if I go back to main screen, for me that is much more accurate. Before I had to turn my head to the side slightly, but now it's very, very accurate. Below this is my favorite section. I think this is really fun. Here you can choose what different gestures you want to use as your selection. So as you saw before, it was hovering or dwelling, and I had to do that for a period of 1 second, which could be quite a long time. Firstly, you can turn that duration down all the way down to 0.25 seconds. Or secondly, you can change that to a different thing altogether. So if you don't want to use hover as your selection, one of the most popular ones is blink. So now I aim at where I want, blink, and it gets selected. So this is probably one of the most quick head tracking gestures and probably one of the most popular as well. But there are a bunch of other ones available just depending on what works for you. There's this big list here. There's eyes looking up, opening your mouth, tongue out, things like this. And you can see each one does have an adjust button next to it. Again, this is just changing how much of a pronounced gesture is required. So turning it down means that I don't have to blink very much. If I turned it all the way up, I'd have to blink quite, in a pronounced way to get that blink to go through. And you can see here for ones that are related to eyes, you can customize each eye individually. The bottom here is just a head tracking game. It's not really a game. All it is just allows you to try out different access methods. So you can just choose your access method, bob into the game, see if it works for you, and just tweak as necessary. So you're ready to go back to the main screen and use Predictable with it. Okay, so that is head tracking. The very last section is scan and track. And this is a sort of hybrid between the two previous methods. So it's a hybrid between scanning and head tracking. So you can see here I've got auto scan selected and blink selected. So now we're scanning through the app like we were before. However, my selection method this time to select what I want is blinking. So I blink, 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 blink. And it said yes. So it's just a hybrid between scanning, so scanning through the app, and using a head gesture as your selection method. The last few accessibility changes you can make are firstly appearance. So you can just change the appearance of certain buttons, borders. Obviously that pointer and buttons have been yellow. Scanning was yellow. You can change those colors if you wanted. You can also just change the opacity. So if you find that yellow sort of highlight on the scanning is obscuring the text too much, you might want to change the color or turn the opacity down or something like that. So yeah, you can just change a few accessibility things there. Next, keyboard and button clicks is really simple. It just changes whether or not the keyboard should click as you type in it. There's an iOS setting for this as well, which would affect an iOS keyboard, but this is just the setting for the predictable keyboard. The quick exit button is that yellow cross we saw before, so just to quickly exit and stop scanning. You can turn that off if you don't want to hit it accidentally. If you never really want to exit scanning quickly like that, you can turn that off. Very similarly, there's a freeze button. So just to quickly show you, if I turn screen tap on again, I've now got a blue freeze button as well as that yellow exit button. That just pauses scanning temporarily. So you can see now there's no scanning happening and it's turned into a play button that I can just press when I'm ready to start again. Finally, from accessibility, you can manage email and floor hold. So before, I think like half an hour ago, I was saying that you can change what feature keys are available. So there's 5 feature keys next to the message window. You can change what those are. There's a bunch of buttons you can choose from. One of those is email, so you can send emails directly from Predictable. All you need to do is go into here, set up your email account. If it's Google, it's really easy. You just tap on that. It'll take you to some Google sign-in page, and you just sign in with your Google account. If it's a non-Google account, you have to turn the setting on here and just fill in whatever details, all that complicated port and stuff. I always get it wrong. But once you've done that, you just press save details, and then you can quickly fire off emails within Predictable. From here, you also can just set up your recipient or contacts list as well. This setting here, pressing email button should, it can either display your recipients list so you can then choose who to send that email to, Or if you're only ever emailing one person, they would be your starred contact, and you can just instantly fire off the email to them. If I just quickly add one to show you what I mean. Okay. You see there, Brad, it's also my starred contact because it's the only one. Lastly, there was just the floor hold section. Again, floor hold is, phrases like please bear with me. There's 3 pre-built ones. That's I'm almost there, please wait a minute, and please bear with me while I use predictable to speak. You can get rid of those if you want, add your own ones, add as many as you want, or customize them. So when you press that button, it just chooses a random one of these phrases to say. You can also turn automatic floor hold on if you want. Turning that on means that every 15 seconds while you're typing a message, it will read out one of these phrases. It doesn't interrupt your typing or anything like that. It just speaks that phrase. And you can customize how often that should happen. So maybe every 25 seconds or something like that. Okay, that was all the accessibility settings. Oh, there's a question. Yes, exactly. Someone asked for the email, does it send the message that's in the message window? Yes, that's exactly how it works. So when you press that email button, it will send the email, and the text is just what's in the message window. But yeah, that was all of the accessibility and speech settings, both of which are quite big and important sections. So if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. The rest we'll go through a bit more quickly, I think. But yeah, we can always go back to it too. Just let me know. The next section is gesture speak, and this is sort of like an access method of its own, and also maybe a bit tricky to get your head around at first. What gesture speak is a feature that allows you to assign gestures to specific actions within Predictable, and we call those gesture recipes. So before I go into it, an example would be I might want blinking to say a certain phrase or smiling to do a certain thing. So I would first activate it with that button up there, then press add new to add new recipe. Then you can choose a category down the left. I'll go on universal core and choose go. And then below that, you can choose your trigger for that phrase. So for example, smile. So now if I were to save this in the top right with that blue tick, every time I smile, it would say the phrase go. What you can do though is assign multiple gestures at once. So maybe I do smile and then tongue out. You can see they've got the numbers on there, 1, then 2. That's the sequence of gestures, and that's why we call that a recipe. So in this case, if I press save, I would smile and then stick my tongue out, and then it would say go. So you can set up different gesture recipes to be certain phrases. You can also do the same thing with actions. So for example, speaking, maybe you want to speak every time you frown or puff your cheek, something like this. So if you set these up, it's just a really quick way to access that button without having to go to the effort of pressing it, or a certain phrase, the same thing. I will turn that off just in case it starts randomly spewing words at me while I smile. The next section is quite an important one in my opinion, theme and appearance. And I know people were asking at the start about changing the sizes of things and stuff like this. So this is, if there are any settings like that, this is where you'll find them. Firstly, there's the theme section. This just contains a bunch of pre-built themes. So for example, high contrast themes or vowel keyboard. There's also a dyslexia keyboard at the bottom. What I know some people like to do is choose one of these themes to start with that appeals most to them, and then sort of tweak it from there, or just get going tweaking from the get-go. But yeah, all these themes do is some change colors like high contrast, some change the home screen, excuse me, for example, like this grid theme would make the grid view the home screen, some change access methods, so screen tap here, that makes screen tap your default access method, things like this. Then below that, you've got a bunch of sections for tweaking it more to make it more personal. So color and font size is a pretty big one. From here, you can change the color and font size of pretty much every part of the app individually. So for example, the word prediction, if I want the font to go down, maybe I want more of the word to appear in those boxes, so I can do that by turning the font size down. And I don't like the color, I'd prefer it to be red I'll keep the font white. If I go back to the main screen, you can see that that prediction bar is now red. The font's quite a lot smaller as well. So that's useful because if you are making phrases that are quite long, oops, wrong section. If you are making phrases that are quite long, maybe not all of the phrases appearing in that box that you have, so you could turn the font size down so that you can see more. Obviously, conversely, if the font size is too small to read, you could turn it up from this section. But yeah, so you can change every little part, everything that you can see here, every section you can see here, you can tweak the color and font size of individually. One to highlight is keyboard keys. This layout is a bit different from here. You can change each key individually as well. So as you saw before, there was that vowel keyboard theme. That's just with vowels highlighted in a different color, like that. So you can change each button as you wish. Excuse me. What else? So global font is really simple. It just changes what font is used throughout the app. Again, there's a dyslexic one, or there just could be a font that you prefer. Keyguard Friendly view is on by default. As you can see on this main screen, everything's laid out in a grid. So everything is perfectly laid out. All the borders between keys and stuff are perfectly grid-like. That's so that it fits with a keyguard if you were to use a keyguard. But you can turn that off if you want. And if I go back, you can see everything gets a bit more rounded. You've got a more traditional keyboard layout with the staggered keys. Personally, I prefer how it looks with Keyguard Friendly view on anyway. But yeah, that's how that works. The other really important part of the theme and appearance settings is this one, show hide feature keys. So again, this is what I was saying before about changing what buttons are available on that main screen. So if I go into top screen, you can see there's all these different feature keys that are either set to show or hide. The 5 set to show are the 5 ones we saw before, so the speak, the share, the settings, and the 2 delete buttons. If I think that, I'm never using the share button, I don't find it useful, I can hide that. And what I might like to replace it with is maybe quick access to email, like I said before. So now if I go back, you can see that on the right there, rather than the share button, I've got a new email button here. So if I press that, it'll probably say that I've not set it up properly. Yep. But that is how you would sort out and set up that email. You can see there's 2 sections, show hide feature keys top screen and keyboard. Top screen, as you just saw, refers to these ones to the right of the message window. Keyboard refers to those blue ones in the bottom right. So yeah, you can have 5 displayed at once. So if I try and show another one, it will shout at me. Or you can have, excuse me, as few as just the settings. I left mail on, but you can show as few as you want as well. Another thing just on that is that I know some people ask about hiding the settings. So, if it's a child user, you don't want them going in and fiddling with the settings and stuff. It's from the iOS settings that you can hide the settings button if you want. And I'll just quickly show how to do that in case it's useful. So again, just go into, oops, sorry for the screen there. Just go into the iPad settings or whatever device settings. Scroll all the way down to find predictable in your apps list. You can see I've got like 10 versions of predictable installed. But here in there, you can just see you can turn on or off display, edit, and settings button. If you turn that off, that just means that from the app, you won't be able to edit the phrase bank or access the settings or do any of those things that could potentially be damaging. Force start settings just means that when you first open the app, it will open the settings. So that could just be a way to access the settings if you need it, if this setting is turned on, if that makes sense. So yeah, just heading back into predictable. Yeah, so you can show and hide up to 5. And someone was asking before about making more room on the screen. So this would be one way to do it. You can hide the history and favorite strip. So if I go back, yeah, you can see that the history and favorites have gone from the top. There's more room for the message window. Where was I? In here. And again, you can just hide the icons of phrases and categories as well. Gives more room for the text, and also some people do just find the icons a bit childish. So if they just want text, then you can hide the icons there too. It works the exact same for keyboard. You can see we've got the 4 buttons along the top. Those are our 4 feature keys on the keyboard. Just tap on one and then choose what you want to replace it with. If I hate the emojis, I want to get rid of them, but replace it with the handwriting feature perhaps. I do that, go back. You can see I've now got handwriting in the bottom right instead of those emojis. I can tap on that and handwrite my message. So yeah. Does it not like my handwriting? I thought that was quite good. Just an H apparently. But yeah, And like I said, those are all the features available. There's, you know, a bell which just plays a sound that you can choose, quick access to the phrase bank, um, making phone calls, another feature I should probably talk about, but there's a section for it. Oh, someone said I've frozen. Can someone kindly confirm if they can still hear me? Um, okay, thanks, Jenny. Um, I'm sorry that I've frozen for someone. I hope it's resolvable. But thanks for confirming that I'm audible for everyone else. Yeah, so that's about showing and hiding feature keys, and there's a bunch of different ones available. So a lot of questions I get are sometimes like, help, the speak button's disappeared or something like that. So if someone does have that issue where they can't find a button, that's probably how you're going to resolve it. Final few points, dexterity position left or right just changes where all those big buttons are. So if I change it to left, you can see that that settings and stuff is now on the left instead. I'll put that back to right. Then home screen, you can change between keyboard, phrase bank, and grid view. So like I was saying earlier, there might be someone who's not using the keyboard so much, they're just more relying on phrases. In that case, you might want to set the home screen to grid view or phrase bank. That just means every time you open the app, it will just default to being on this grid view rather than having to go into the keyboard, go through the phrase bank, and then go to grid view. Finally, skin tone just changes the skin tone of the all the icons and stuff. Word prediction settings. Again, most of these do what they say on the tin. It's all about how the word prediction works, things like autocorrect. But there are a few issues that can arise, so it's useful to know how these settings work. Firstly, word prediction on or off. You can turn that blue bar off if you wanted. Oh, if I make my way back to the keyboard, you can see that it's now disappeared, so it's not there. Again, just less clutter on the screen. You can change between a British and American dictionary. Obviously, you might want to change to British to get rid of those nasty Zs. Next, you've got a few things like spell check, autocorrect, and autocompletion, which are as they are with most keyboards. Spell check will just highlight something in red if you spell it wrong. Autocorrect will correct it without asking you. It'll just fix it for you. Autocompletion is probably the most sort of like aggressive one. You can see now I've got that word in purple. That's the autocompletion word. So if I just press space, it will write that for me. And if I start typing something, apparently I've typed head to a lot on that account. I don't know what that is. But yeah, by pressing space, I can autocomplete that word. Next, you've got learning rate. So that just changes how quickly Predictable should learn the words you're saying and stuff like that. Fast means that you'll have to say something once or twice for Predictable to pick it up as a real word. And obviously slow, you'll have to say it quite a few times. And this is what I mean where issues can occur. So if you've got the setting on medium or fast, but someone is making quite a lot of typos and quite consistently, then it could be that Predictable picks that up as a word and then maybe even starts like, you know, if you've got autocorrect on, it'll start autocorrecting 2 typos. So that's just one thing to be aware of. If someone is someone who's susceptible to making typos, um, then you might want to set that to slow or never. And you also might want to reset context learning and get rid of all those learned words that could be incorrect. Someone asked, when I type in a phrase, I get a random word in blue added to the message. This is then spoken with my message. So that could be that auto-completion. Does it look like, I really need to change my home screen to the keyboard again. Does it look like this? Like the word is pre-filled like this? Because it could be that you have to turn auto-completion off. It could also be that autocorrect is on. And again, if I go into all the way bottom, manage self-learned words, there it is. There's that weird head to word that is showing up for me all the time. So if I want to get rid of that, I can tap on that, press delete, and now hopefully I'm not going to get head to recommended to me as a word. So hopefully that resolves that issue. It could be either of those things, but again, it's very likely something that's happening in word prediction. Finally, you can just restrict or allow profane words, change the number of predictions in that blue bar, and also just change whether you're saving history or not. So like I said at the start, every time you say a message, it gets saved to your history category, but you might want to turn that off and stop that from happening. And there's a button there to just delete all of your history as well if you want to get rid of it. Keyboard settings. There's a few to choose from. So QWERTY is the default. You can also change it to ABC for an alphabetical keyboard. Excuse me. High frequency. That looks like this. And this could be useful if you're using a scanning method, because then the letters that you're more likely to use are going to be at the start of the scanning, so you don't have to scan through the whole row. That's when that could be useful. There's also 10 key, which looks like this. So now we've got 5 big buttons rather than each individual key. I just tap on one and I go into that, and I've got 5 more. Each just big buttons for that letter, and I can go left and right to cycle through each section as well. Settings. I'm also just going to quickly reset my settings to default because I'm sick of having to go through the grid view to get back to the main screen. But yeah, found off your keyboard settings. Oops. You can also just turn on native keyboard if you wanted. If you don't want to use the predictable one, you can just use the normal iOS or Android if you're using Android keyboard there. That's good for if you're using some sort of iOS settings that tweak your keyboard that you find important, then you might want to turn that on and use the iOS keyboard. Or if you've installed some sort of third-party keyboard, I know some people, for example, use the Swift Microsoft keyboard, so that's how you would use that as well. Keyboard caps just changes whether the keyboard should be in caps or not. When it's turned on, it'll just be in caps all the time. It won't type in caps. It'll just look like it's caps. And finally, there's a little section to do with external keyboards. So like I said before, you can use an external keyboard as a switch, or you can, of course, just connect an external keyboard to swipe. Someone just asked, would it allow a swipe keyboard? Yes. So if you do want to use a swipe keyboard, you probably want to activate native. And if you do have one of those installed, it would then use that instead. Or if you've got swipe enabled on the iOS keyboard. I should know if you can do that, I'm not sure. But yes, so you can swipe if you've got native activated. But yeah, external keyboard, you can plug it in, type away with it, just using that external keyboard instead. You can also set up shortcuts using that keyboard as well. So if I go and manage external keyboard shortcuts and add new, on the left, you can see all the actions you might want to assign. For example, speak. And maybe you want to assign speak to up arrow. So if you are an external keyboard user, you can just perform most of your actions from the keyboard without having to reach across to the iPad, for example. One I like is having delete all on something like Control A or something like that. Just so you've got quick access to all of those actions that you would need without having to, like I said, interact with the iPad itself. This setting here, use keyboard for writing of shortcuts, just means which one should the keyboard prioritize. So for example, if you press Shift and A, obviously that could be a shortcut, or it could be that you want to type capital A. You just choose that here, so which one should it prioritize? With writing, it would be a capital A. With shortcuts, it would be your shortcut if you set one up. And also from here, you can just manage your emojis. So like I was saying, they've all got sounds attached. You can tap on one, press edit, attach a new sound if you want. It could be making your own recordings if you've downloaded them from the internet or something like that. That's how you would do it. Almost the end of the settings, I promise. Next, grid layout settings. So firstly, you can just change how many rows or columns there are. So for example, if you need really big targets in that grid view, if you need to be able to really easily hit them, you might want to set it to 2 by 2 or something like 3 by 3. Then if I go over to grid view, you can see that these are really big grid cells. So hopefully quite easy to hit. Conversely, if that's not an issue, but you want to see as many of your phrases on screen at once, you might want to set it to 8 by 8. And then again, now you can see I've got many, many phrases on the screen at once, so you can quickly access a large portion of your phrase bank without having to do much navigation. Here you can just change how the grid layout looks, so the font size and the colors. And finally, just some settings about how grid view should behave. So should there be a message window in there? Should it speak everything when you tap on it? Do you want the icons in there? Again, you might want to hide the icons. Do you want the categories in there? So you can hide the categories. If you're just using one big category, you can hide the rest of the categories and just use that one. Again, reducing clutter on the screen. And again, hiding the icons of the phrases. And then there's a button to just reset it all to default. Next, making phone calls. I know it is quite a popular setting. So how making phone calls works is that when you make a phone call using predictable, the synthetic voice that you're using will get sent sort of down the phone. So you won't hear what you're saying, but the person on the other end of the call will. So that's where that highlight as you speak setting from the speech settings might be useful, so you can see exactly what they're hearing and when. So there is a phone call feature key. You probably noticed it when we were going through the human experience settings. Um, when you press that, you can choose that whether should it. I can't speak all of a sudden. When you press that phone call button, you can choose whether it should display a contact list, so you can choose who to call, or just call your stored contact, the exact same way that emails worked. And again, now you can choose between FaceTime and phone. Because I'm on an iPad right now, it won't let me do phone. Obviously, there's no phone calling service apart from FaceTime on an iPad. But if it was an iPhone, then I could set up phones like normal numbers as well. From the bottom there, you can add new contacts. So it could be obviously a phone number for FaceTime or an email. If you're using a phone, then you could just add normal phone numbers there too. The other thing to talk about with phone calling is that you're not restricted to using predictable with just FaceTime or a phone call. If you're using another app like WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, something like this to use make your calls, what you can do is switch to that app, start your call, then switch back to predictable to speak, and it'll still work. It'll still send the voice like down the call. The person on the other end will hear it, but you just have to take those couple of extra steps because it's not sort of built into predictable. The very last section of the settings is multi-language. So from here, you can set up a secondary language. So if you've got a bilingual user, or if you're someone that speaks to someone from, half your family is from another country, perhaps. Here, you can firstly select your secondary language. So maybe German. And you can see now switch to secondary language is turned on. That means if I go here, you can see I've got a German keyboard and a German voice has been selected as well. I can turn that off, and now I'm back to English. Again, there's a feature key for this, so you might want to set up a feature key to quickly switch between the two languages. You can select what voice should be used in that language. So you can see here's a few German ones. Excuse me. And then you can just change what keyboard is used in that language as well. There's a button to reset the phrase bank to the secondary language. You have to be careful with this one. What it does is completely wipes your phrase bank and replaces it with the default one from that language, if that makes sense. So yeah, just be careful you're not wiping your phrase bank there. It's important to remember this one. Sometimes people can turn this on by accident. So, if their word prediction disappeared or their voice has turned funny, it could be that multi-language has found its way on and just needs to be turned off. I know that causes issues for some people. The very last section is just support. There's no settings to change here. It's just access to some support resources, a quick button to email us, access to the help guide, our website, things like this. Access to the web platform, which I'll explain in a moment. And there's also just a handy YouTube playlist with a bunch of short videos in, just quickly explaining each feature individually. There's also an hour-long training video in there, sort of like the webinar we're doing right now, where you can go in and just watch that at your own pace. But yeah, we finally made it. That was everything. That was all the settings within Predictable. Does anyone have any questions? Like I said, there's still just the web platform to show you, but that was the vast majority of it. Just while I wait to see if any questions come in, to explain the web platform, it's just a quick way you can access your phrase bank from a computer or a laptop via web. So if you go to, actually, I may as well bring it up, I suppose. Bear with me. I need to stop screen sharing and choose. I can't find it. I'm being silly. Someone just said, please go get a drink for that fair. Don't worry, I've been on the lem sip all day. I'll be okay. Yes, Richard, this session will be recorded and I will upload it to YouTube as well. We have a YouTube channel. So I'll upload it there as well. And I'll send out the link to everyone that attended as well as some follow-up information. Someone also asked, do you give out professionals licenses so that we can show to patients who will potentially buy? So how that works is, firstly, we offer free 2-week trials to anyone. So that could go to you for your assessment device or straight to the patient themselves. We can give them the 2-week trial. But also, yes, we do obviously get quite a lot of requests for an assessment license so that people can have it on their assessment device. Because we only get a limited number of codes to distribute per app update, I think we only get 100. And we get quite a lot of requests. Obviously, each one represents a cost. So what we often do is ask that you write a write-up or an app store review or a case study or something on our website, because that sort of thing really helps to show how good the app is and helps people decide whether it's for them or not. Um, so yeah, just get in touch with our support email address, which is support@therapy-box.co.uk, and we can definitely work on getting you an assessment license or a free trial if your patient needs a free trial. Um, but yeah, and thank you to everyone saying that's been useful. I'm happy that you found it so. I'm just still trying to figure out how to show my other screen. I'm being really silly. Oh, I found it. Okay, so now you should be able to see, this is our website, our TherapyBox website. If you just press sign in the top right, this takes you to a login page for the web platform. So I'll quickly log in with my account that I was using in the demo just then. And this is just a way where you can remotely manage the phrase bank from a computer. You can see I've got all my categories there. I can tap on one or press one to open it up. I can quickly edit one. Um, you can drag them around, add new ones. So it's just a really quick way to remotely manage phrases. Maybe if you don't have access to the iPad or you're trying to help a patient or something like that. The other useful part is that there's this audio and images tab. What you can do is import audio and images from your computer. So what you might like to do is if there's certain sounds you want to use or certain images you want to use as icons, you might want to download them off the internet or from wherever. If you've already got them on your computer, maybe there's some like photos that you want to use. Just press this import audio button. It'll bring up, your file browser for your computer or images. It's the exact same, and you can import them there. The only other section is profile, which just lets you log out and change your name if you want. Not super useful. The draft phrases tab, if you're not familiar with it, it's probably not super useful. It's a method basically to implement a message banking service called My Message Banking, which is an online service where you can go in and bank a bunch of messages, assign them categories and stuff, and then import them there. So that is just for people that have come from that service really and want to use predictable rather than something that you really have to worry about as a predictable user. But yeah, that does, I think, round it off. Like I said, our support email address, you can see it on the screen there, support@therapy-box.co.uk. If you've got any questions at all ever, that's the place to email. There's also a chat feature on our website. So if you do go to our website, I'll go back here. There's chat in the bottom left. You can just start a chat with us really quickly and get an answer to a query. I do these sessions every month as well. So if if you'd like to attend another one, if you really enjoyed it, or you've got team members or something that would like to attend, please let them know. You can find dates for them in the support section of our website. But yeah, if there are no other questions, I guess I will leave it there. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for all the questions. This is really nice. But yeah, don't hesitate to let me know. I think you all have my email as well, if you need anything. But yeah, I think I will leave it there. Thank you so much.